Whew, boy. 2112, we finally get to it. Rush's fourth album. Now, if you watch the review for Caress of Steel, you know that at the end of that we spoke a little bit about the circumstances of which this album came about. I want to reiterate that for some of you that perhaps didn't see that. And it's the fact that Caress of Steel was considered to be such a failure and really didn't perform the way in which everyone expected it to, that their record label, Mercury Records at the time, I told them not to make another album like Caress of Steel, which was a 5-track affair that featured 2 tracks of more than 12 minutes in length, back-to-back right at its end point, so tracks 4 and 5. So Rush had a decision to make. They had to decide to either stick with their record label's wishes or to stay true to their own element. Fortunately enough, they stayed true to their own element, because if they would have followed their record label's wishes, the album of which 2112 would have become would have been completely different or non-existent. Because they decided to go off and do their own thing. They decided to write yet another story song, very similar to what they had done on Caress of Steel, and with 2112, the title track on this album, which spans more than 20 minutes in length, and is considered to be one of the greatest progressive rock songs of all time. So there's mud in your eye, I guess, if you're a member of the Mercury Records crew that issued that warning and you still happen to be alive. But 2112 is considered to be one of the greatest concept albums of all time. And what's funny about it is that whenever you consider concept album, you think of the entirety of the record being part of the concept. You don't think about just maybe one half of it. And that's actually what's true about 2112. Only one half of this record is truly a concept record, and that is side A, which is the entirety of 2112. And I'm talking, of course, on the original vinyl edition or on the cassette edition. This is a long track that spans more than 20 minutes 34 seconds to be exact, and tells a grand story of a time that is, well, in the future, but at the same time, I mean, it's scary how there are some parallels that actually exist. Where there is a group, a federation that kind of controls the media, that controls the music and everything that people listen to and enjoy, and there is peace. Meanwhile, an anonymous man, who we assume is 2112 himself, finds a guitar and learns how to play it and wants to wow the priests of the Temple of the Syrinx with his discovery, and he thinks it's going to be a great thing for all of the people because now they can make their own music, and he thinks that it's going to provide more happiness. Or, of course, that's not the case. That's not what the priests want whatsoever. It's a thing of antiquity. It's what actually is one of the things that caused the fall of ancient man. So he smashes the guitar, and of course our protagonist is very downtrodden about this. He saw how things were in the past through a dream, and he knows that he had been right, but he knows that there was nothing that he could really do. It's a sad parallel considering the times that we live in today. It's almost very strange how a song written nearly 40 years ago draws some strange parallels. It's almost like reading 1984 by George Orwell and then realizing just how close to accurate that book is really starting to become, or reading Jules Verne, I believe it was. He did a novel called Paris in the 20th Century, and you notice that many of his inventions ended up becoming reality more than a century later. But wow, this is just a tremendous track. This is an amazing song, one that definitely deserves all the accolades that it deserves. This is one that has that very theatrical element to it, where the music is representing the different elements of the story, and you can clearly tell the conversation pieces between our protagonist and our antagonists based around the pitch and the harshness of the voice. We have our protagonist, which speaks in a very calm yet excited voice, and our antagonist, which is a lot more rough-edged, demanding, and very much spoken like a man who's in power and does not want a single thing to threaten it. Again, an ironic twist. Actually, it's kind of funny too, because if you listen to this exchange between 2112 and the priests, I kind of think this weird thought that it's kind of their own way of saying, well, Mercury Records, you told us to not do Caress of Steel again, well, fuck you. We're doing something that's not quite that big. We're going to do this, and it's going to be amazing. Now, of course, that's not the case whatsoever, but I think about that now in the future after it's happened, because look what occurred. We saw Rush go from a band that was wondering whether or not they were going to be around for that much longer to them becoming one of the largest household names in progressive rock. And it's all because of 2112. It's all because they decided to stand up for their own principles and do their own thing and stay true to who they were. Now, there are other songs on this album. There's Passage to Bangkok, The Twilight Zone, there's Lessons, Tears, and Something for Nothing. Something for Nothing has an interesting story behind it, considering it's based off of some graffiti that the band saw about how freedom isn't free. And Neil Peart wrote a song based around that. And this is also a track where we see some lyricisms from Getty and the remainder of the band. It's no longer just a one-man show lyrically. They attempted that. And these are all solid tracks as well. They definitely suit the age. They suit the middle part of the 1970s, where there's that nice combination of progressive charm mixed in with the hard rock roots that Rush really was founded on. I really love A Passage to Bangkok because it always makes me in the mood to, directly after I listen to it, listen to China Girl by David Bowie. And I just love those two songs back to back together. I just love it. It's a really cool little duality, and China Girl is just kind of a really seductive but yet, taboo song that just really, it goes so well with this, and I just really enjoy that. The Twilight Zone is based around the show of the same name, and is a tremendous track by itself, and I really feel that Lessons and Tears both get a little bit forgotten on this record, considering Passage into Bangkok and Twilight Zone kind of just, they put themselves out there so very well, and really kind of overshadow everything that comes afterward because of those two tracks in 2112. I mean, it's just such a strong three-track, opening to an album. It's such a strong, initial half an hour. It's just crazy. This album deserves all the accolades that it has. It deserves all the accolades because it's a tremendous work. You compare it to some of their other long, conceptually based songs, and this one just rises right to the top. I mean, there's going to be debates on which one you like the most, because music itself is subjective. It's based off of your own taste, but you can kind of understand whenever you listen to 2112 why the overwhelming majority would put 2112 at the top, why they would make that the alpha dog of the Rush lengthy song discography, or songography, whatever you want to call it. It just has such a tremendously compelling story. It's one that's very much a very sci-fi, high fantasy type of idea, but it's also one that has a lot of root in reality. It has a lot of root in relatability. It's a song that very simply, it really matched not only a lot of great novels of the time, or at least a lot of the classic novels that many people were reading, but it also has a lot of compelling arguments for the future and how the future may actually turn out. In fact, funnily enough, Ayn Rand, who wrote novels such as Anthem, The Fountainhead, and Atlas Shrugged, if I remember correctly, was thanked in the liner notes because of the very dystopian nature of 2112, and it actually caused a bit of a backlash for the band. It caused a bit of negative press because a lot of people were drawing conclusions to communism and Nazism, and it was kind of rude considering Geddy Lee's parents, I believe both of them, or at least one of them, survived the Holocaust. So yeah, that's real nice. Obviously, they're going to write about that whenever the fucker has roots. God, some people are just morons. But anyway, 2112. Is it the greatest prog rock album of all time? Is it? Let me know in the comments if you think that it is. If you think that it is, then definitely let me know. And if you don't think that it is, let me know what you think is. Andrew Bennett, I know you're going to be in here, so please, wow me. I would love it. But now we have to move on. We have to move on from the magnum opus, the big boy, the king kahuna of Rush albums in the 1970s, and see what the latter half of the decade would bring. And we would start, not right away, but eventually we will start to see a little bit of a change, a little bit of transformation in this band that would lead to their largest selling album of all time. But that's not for a little while. Let's stay focused and let's move on.